Have you ever considered the moral and legal implications of buying and selling reproductive materials such as eggs, sperm, and embryos? It's quite the conversation starter, isn't it? Let's delve into this topic, which sits at the crossroads of science, morality, and law. At the heart of this issue, we find key technologies like in vitro fertilization, or IVF for short, surrogacy, and cryopreservation. These advances in reproductive technology have opened up new possibilities, but also new debates. And what about the terms we often encounter in these discussions? Gametes refer to the reproductive cells involved, namely sperm and eggs. A zygote is what we get when these gametes successfully combine. And an embryo? That's the next stage where the zygote begins to grow and develop. Now that we've defined the key terms and concepts, let's delve deeper into the ethical and legal perspectives surrounding this issue. What are the moral objections to the trade of reproductive materials? Let's delve deeper into this complex issue. One major objection is the commodification of life. Critics argue that selling eggs, sperm, or embryos reduces the miracle of life to a mere transaction. They believe that the inherent value and dignity of human life should keep it outside the realm of market trade. Next on the list is the potential exploitation of women. There's a concern that economically disadvantaged women may be coerced into selling their eggs due to financial need. This can lead to situations where the well-being of these women is compromised, as they might feel pressured to undergo invasive procedures, with potential health risks for monetary gain. Additionally, there's the question of potential harm to the resulting children. Some argue that the trade of reproductive materials can lead to a form of genetic selection, where certain traits are favored over others. This could have significant implications for the child's sense of identity and self-worth. Now, let's compare these moral objections to other controversial trades. The selling of organs, for instance, is similarly fraught with ethical dilemmas. It's also criticized for commodifying life and potentially exploiting the poor. However, it's worth noting that organ trade could potentially save lives, adding another layer of complexity to the ethical debate. Prostitution, another contentious trade, shares similarities with the reproductive materials trade in terms of potential exploitation. Critics argue that it can lead to the commodification of the human body and the exploitation of vulnerable individuals, often for the benefit of others. In conclusion, these trades, the selling of reproductive materials, organs, and services like prostitution, all grapple with similar ethical dilemmas. They force us to question whether certain aspects of life should be kept separate from market forces. They also highlight societal inequalities and the potential for exploitation. Just as with organ sales and prostitution, the trade of reproductive materials raises important ethical questions that society must address. How do different jurisdictions address the legal issues surrounding the sale of reproductive materials? One common legal solution is outright prohibition. In several countries, the sale of reproductive materials, whether it's sperm, eggs, or embryos, is completely banned. This is often due to deeply rooted cultural, religious, or ethical views. For instance, in Italy and Germany, any form of trade in reproductive materials is illegal, reflecting a conservative stance on the sanctity of life and the human body. On the other hand, some jurisdictions take a regulatory approach. In these areas, the sale of reproductive materials is allowed but under strict rules and regulations. The United Kingdom is a prime example of this. Here, the sale of sperm, eggs, and embryos is legal, but heavily regulated by the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority. This ensures that the trade is conducted ethically and transparently, protecting all parties involved. Then there are market-based approaches. In certain places like the United States, the sale of reproductive materials is largely treated as a commercial transaction. Here, the market dynamics of supply and demand largely dictate the terms of the trade. However, even in these jurisdictions, there are regulations in place to ensure ethical standards are maintained. It's important to note the wide variation in laws around the world. In some Asian countries, the sale of reproductive materials is largely unregulated. In contrast, Scandinavian countries tend to have strict laws and regulations. This diversity in legal perspectives reflects the differing cultural, religious, and ethical views of each society. The legal landscape also changes over time. As societal attitudes evolve and scientific advancements are made, laws adapt to reflect these shifts. For example, several countries that once had strict bans have since relaxed their laws, allowing for regulated trade. As we've seen, the legal landscape for the trade of reproductive materials is complex and varied, reflecting the deep moral questions this issue raises. So where does this leave us in the debate over the morality and legality of trading reproductive materials? In summary, we've examined the major technologies, terms, and concepts in this domain. We've delved into the moral objections, potential harms, and legal solutions associated with such trade. We've also compared this with other contentious trades, such as organ selling and prostitution. Ultimately, the trade of reproductive materials poses significant moral and legal challenges that society must continue to grapple with.